The wind over Willow Hollow carried the smell of ash even after 3 years. Cale Ashgrove had walked through many ruins since the war ended, but this one always felt different. It was here that his army had once marched through, following his father's final orders, and it was here that an entire Omega settlement had been destroyed in a single night. Cale had not given that order. He had only been a young commander then, forced to follow a king who no longer listened to reason. But guilt did not care about excuses. It settled into a man's bones and stayed there. Now Cale was the Alpha King himself, ruler of the Northfire Pack, feared across every territory for his strength and his silence. He rarely spoke unless it was necessary, and he rarely smiled at all. His warriors respected him, his advisors trusted his judgment, but none of them knew that every year, on the anniversary of the Hollow's destruction, he returned alone to walk through the wreckage, searching for something he could never quite name. This year, his second-in-command, Rorik, insisted on joining him. "There is nothing left here, Cale," Rorik said, stepping carefully over a broken beam. "The scouts checked this place years ago. No survivors." "I know," Cale answered. "I still need to see it." They walked in silence past the collapsed remains of what used to be homes, past the chapel that had lost half its roof, its stone walls blackened, but still standing. Cale paused there, the way he always did. Something about the chapel unsettled him, though he could never explain why. Then his wolf stirred. It was faint at first, a scent buried beneath years of dust and rain, but it was there, alive, warm, achingly familiar in a way he had never experienced before. Cale's whole body went still. "Cale?" Rorik asked, noticing the change in him immediately. "Someone is here," Cale said quietly. He moved toward the chapel's ruined floor, dropping to his knees beside a collapsed section near the altar. Beneath broken stone, he found a narrow gap leading down into what must have once been a root cellar. The scent grew stronger. His heart pounded in a way it had not in years. "Help me clear this," he said, and together they pulled away enough rubble to open a passage. Inside, curled into the corner of the small dark space, was a woman. She was thin, her clothes little more than rags, her hair tangled and dull with dust. Her eyes, when they lifted to meet his, were wide with terror, the eyes of someone who had learned that being seen meant being hurt. She pressed herself against the wall as if she could disappear into the stone. "It's all right," Cale said gently, kneeling at the edge of the cellar, so he would not tower over her. "We are not here to harm you." She did not answer. She did not even seem to breathe. Rorik's voice, low with disbelief, came from behind him. "An Omega? After all this time? How is that possible?" Cale did not answer him. His attention was fixed entirely on the trembling woman in front of him. Slowly, carefully, he reached out his hand, palm open, the way one might approach a frightened animal. "I will not touch you unless you allow it," he said. "But I need to help you out of there. Can you take my hand?" For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, hesitantly, her thin fingers reached out and touched his palm. The moment their skin met, something inside Cale shifted violently, as though the earth itself had tilted beneath him. A warmth spread through his chest, sharp and overwhelming, unlike anything he had ever known. He had heard stories of the mate bond his entire life, had watched other wolves find theirs, had long ago accepted that his own bond might never awaken. Now, kneeling in the ruins of a village his own people had destroyed, it had found him anyway. He stopped breathing for a moment, just staring at her. She did not seem to understand what had happened. She only flinched at his stillness, pulling her hand back quickly, curling further into herself. "It's all right," Cale said again, forcing his voice to remain steady, despite the storm inside him. "You are safe now. I promise you that." She said nothing. She only watched him, wary and silent, as he helped her climb out of the cellar into the grey daylight. Rorik stared at Cale with open concern. "You felt something. I saw it on your face." "Later," Cale said. "Right now, she needs care." He wrapped his own cloak around her thin shoulders and carried her gently when her legs proved too weak to walk far. She did not resist him, though she trembled the entire way back to where their horses waited. Rorik said nothing more, though his expression carried 1,000 unspoken questions. They brought her to the North Fire stronghold that same evening. Elder Yissa, the pack's healer, examined her carefully, noting the scars on her arms, the evidence of old wounds long healed, and the deep hollowness in her eyes that spoke of suffering healers could not mend with herbs alone. "She has not spoken in a very long time," Yissa said quietly to Kale after the examination. "Perhaps years. Her body has healed as much as it can on its own, but her voice and her trust, that will take much longer." "Her name," Kale said. "Do we know it?" Yissa shook her head. "She carries no identification, no belongings. Whatever happened to her in that cellar, she has locked it away where none of us can reach it yet." Kale visited her chamber the next morning, and the morning after that. He did not press her to speak. He did not even ask her questions that required an answer. He simply sat with her, sometimes reading quietly from an old book, sometimes simply existing in the same room while she watched him from across the space, as though testing whether he might disappear or turn cruel without warning. Rorik voiced his doubts more than once. "The pack will not easily accept an Omega from Willow Hollow as your mate, Kale. There will be those who remember what happened there. There will be those who blame her people, and those who feel guilt seeing her. Then they will need to learn," Kale answered simply. "I did not choose this bond to please anyone. It found me, and I intend to honor it." Weeks passed this way. Slowly, the woman began eating more, though she still flinched at sudden movements and loud voices. Elder Yissa gave her the name Mira, borrowed from an old word meaning wonder, since the woman herself had offered nothing to call her by. Mira did not object to the name, and slowly, it became hers. Kale learned patience he did not know he possessed. He learned to sit quietly for hours, without demanding anything from her. He learned to recognize the smallest signs of her comfort, a slight loosening of her shoulders, the way she sometimes turned her face toward the window when he spoke softly about the world beyond her chamber walls. He told her about the pack, about the mountains beyond the stronghold, about small things that required no response, only her presence. One night, nearly 2 months after he had found her, Kale was awoken by a sound down the hall, sharp and frightened. He was at her door within seconds, finding her healers already gathered, Yissa trying gently to calm her. Mira was thrashing in her sleep, caught in a nightmare, and for the first time since he had found her, she was making sound. Broken, wordless cries that tore at something deep in Kale's chest. He knelt beside her bed immediately. "Mira," he said softly, "you are safe. You are here, with me." Her eyes opened, wild and unseeing at first, until they focused on his face. Something in her recognized him, even through the haze of terror, and instead of pulling away, her hand shot out and gripped his with surprising strength. She did not let go for the rest of the night. After that night, something between them began to change. She still did not speak, but she no longer flinched when he entered the room. She began to seek him out during the day, appearing quietly in doorways where he worked, content simply to sit nearby while he attended to his duties as king. The pack members, seeing their alpha king gentle and patient with the silent woman, slowly began to soften their opinions as well. Even Rorik, watching the way Kale's entire demeanor changed in her presence, eventually admitted that perhaps the bond had chosen wisely. Autumn arrived, bringing cooler air and golden light to the stronghold's gardens, which had been slowly restored since the war's end. Kale began walking with Mira there in the evenings, matching his pace to hers, saying little, simply enjoying her quiet company beneath the changing leaves. It was on one such evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the garden in warm orange light, that Mira stopped walking. Kale paused beside her, following her gaze toward a cluster of small white flowers growing along the garden wall, flowers that had somehow survived the destruction of the war and bloomed again despite everything. She reached out and touched one gently, then turned to look up at him. Her lips parted, and for a long moment nothing came out at all. Kale waited, as he always did, without pressure, without expectation. Then, softly, hesitantly, in a voice rough from years of silence, she spoke his name. Kale. His entire body went rigid with shock. He had imagined this moment more times than he could count, yet nothing had prepared him for the reality of hearing his name spoken by her voice for the first time. she continued, her voice trembling but growing steadier with each word. You found me. Cale felt something break open inside his chest. A wall he had built so long ago he had forgotten it was there. Tears filled his eyes before he even understood what was happening, and the powerful Alpha King, who had never once wept in front of another living soul, found himself unable to breathe through the overwhelming wave of emotion crashing over him. He dropped to his knees in front of her, gently taking her hands in his, tears falling freely down his face. Yes, he managed to say, his voice breaking, I found you, and I will never let you go again. Mira, seeing him cry for the first time, reached out and wiped a tear from his cheek with trembling fingers, something like a smile beginning to form at the corners of her mouth for the very first time since he had known her. Thank you, she whispered, for waiting. Word of Mira's first words spread quickly through the stronghold, and with it came a shift in how the pack viewed her. She was no longer simply the silent survivor Cale had brought home from the ruins. She was becoming, slowly and surely, their future queen. Even those who had once doubted the wisdom of the bond began to see the quiet strength she carried, the resilience that had kept her alive through unimaginable loss, and the gentle warmth that emerged more each day as she healed. In the following months, Mira began speaking more, though always carefully, always in her own time. She told Cale, in pieces, about her family, about the night everything was taken from her, about the years of silence she had chosen, not because she could not speak, but because she believed no one worth speaking to remained in the world. Cale listened to every word, holding her through every difficult memory, never once looking away from the pain she carried. The pack eventually returned to Willow Hollow, not to mourn what had been lost, but to begin rebuilding. Cale insisted the chapel be restored first, as a tribute to the place where he had found the woman who saved him as much as he had saved her. Mira stood beside him during the rebuilding, her hand in his, watching new walls rise where ruins once stood. Rorik, standing nearby during one such visit, finally spoke the words he had held back for so long. I was wrong about her, Cale. I see now what the bond saw from the very beginning. Cale simply nodded, watching Mira laugh softly at something one of the younger pack members said to her, a sound that had once seemed impossible and now filled the stronghold with unexpected warmth. He thought of the years of guilt he had carried, the ruins he had returned to again and again, searching for something he never expected to find. He had found her instead, and in finding her, he had finally found his own healing as well.